How do you find fulfillment in your natal chart? So many spiritual seekers and lovers of astrology want to know, how do we find meaning? I'm Cassandra of Saturn Sage Astrology. Welcome to this video. We're going to talk all about how to find fulfillment using your natal chart in astrology. Today we're talking about the 3 biggest factors in the natal chart that can help you find meaning. And then we're going to go over transits that can highlight this topic, this theme, and we'll look at some example charts. So let's go, you guys. Finding meaning and being fulfilled is really a combination of having all these factors work together. So do not think that this video is everything you need to know, but this is as much as I can fit into one video on the topic. And I do offer private readings, so you can click the link below to book with me if you'd like to do that. Moving on now to the 3 biggest factors for fulfillment in the natal chart. Number 1 is the moon. Number 2 is Venus. And number 3 is the 9th house. So the reason the moon is on this list is because the moon represents our innate emotional needs. It's what we need to be okay. And while oftentimes fulfilling the needs of the moon actually won't bring us fulfillment in life, but it will stop us from it if we don't have those needs met. Okay, so how can you find the meaning of life if you can't even feed yourself the food that you need to eat every day? The moon is our ability to care for ourselves. So it's really important, if we're going to find meaning, if we're going to be fulfilled, to make sure the moon isn't really messing us up here. Number 2, Venus. Venus is what we love. If we do what we love, we tend to be happier. And then the 9th house is the house in the chart of meaning in life. It encompasses more than that. And we will talk more about that later in the video. Also, if you want more on the 9th house, make sure you subscribe to this channel because I have another video coming out just on the 9th house and planets in it. So let's go to the moon. Okay, the moon, the most basic first. It is very hard, guys, to find deeper meaning if you're not okay. So first we get okay, then we get good, then we get great. So the moon by sign and house is going to tell us what our needs are. So I'm quickly going to go over some of the basics here. So I'll go through, if you have your moon in a fire sign, your needs are going to be passion. You need passion. You need your life to move forward. You probably need more physical movement and exercise than the other moon signs. Moon in fire, fire wants to move. So moon and fire people need to keep going. They need to be expanding. They need to be taking action. They need to be initiating. And moon and earth. Moon and earth need stability. They need to be able to trust what's going to happen. Oftentimes, moon in earth will need a certain amount of control over their environment, their life, or who comes in and out of it. They might be the ones who are asking you your plan for the day so they can make sure everyone's plans match up together, right? So moon and earth, that's one of the needs. Moon and earth will take care of you by making you a sandwich. Comment below moon and earth signs if that's not accurate. Moon in air. If your moon is in an air sign, you need communication. You need to be able to talk to people. Now that can go as far as just connecting with people in relationship and doing things in partnership. It can go as far as the need to really weigh ideas and think them through and journal the pros and cons and really think about things and analyze them and bring them back together to a cohesive purpose, have a higher level of thinking involved. Oftentimes, moon and air signs, like in their relationships, they're going to need communication, flowing communication that stimulates. Moon and air also are the most flexible, have the most flexibility of the moon signs, which means they're going to need change more often, I would say, except for moon in Aquarius. If your moon is in a water sign, you need emotions. Now, usually you need things that soothe your emotions. You need to feel safe with people. If your moon is in a water sign, that's more important. How you feel in your relationships is more important. How you feel in your work, whether you enjoy your experiences usually is more important. Oftentimes moon and water sign need to have other people in their lives they nurture, or have the space to feel the way they feel in their relationships and let it be okay. They have this emotional depth. They can understand different layers of emotion that the other moon and moon in the other signs don't necessarily get. For more on that, you can watch your moon by sign. I have a video on that. Now you can also look to your moon by house. The house of your moon sign is going to tell you more about your innate emotional needs. So I would say before looking at your ninth house, look at your moon, make sure you understand the sign and house of your moon and that you are getting what you need, those needs met first. So the moon by house is going to tell you what activities or areas of life are most dear to you, most dear to your heart. If it's in your second house, money. Your first house, your identity, your life decisions, who you are to other people, your interactions with others. Third house, your mind. Fourth house, your family, your home, your emotional foundations. Fifth house, your creative self-expression or your kids. Sixth house, your habits, the things you do on a day-to-day basis, your routines. Seventh house, your partnerships, your relationships. Eighth house, your intimacy, your possibly, sometimes this will be like other people's money, other taboo topics, just depending. Eighth house is complicated. Ninth house moon, this is going to be, you're going to care about the meaning of life. You're going to need to explore or travel or read or study or go into the law or do something related to philosophy. 10th house, career. Your career is like your baby. And moon in the 10th also, whatever you do in public, people are going to see your true motives. So if you don't have good motives, you're going to get called out. Moon in the 11th, you can win over an audience, groups, friends. Your friends are really important. You need to belong. That's really important for 11th house moon. 12th house moon, you need time away. You need to isolate sometimes. You might need just a certain amount of time to process your emotions. You also may have to dig a little deeper under some subconscious layers to figure out how you really feel, because people with moon in the 12th, it's not obvious how they feel. Anything in that 12th house is kind of hidden from us. We have to look for it. So that's a brief rundown of the moon through the houses. If you want a more in-depth explanation, I have videos on that, so check those out after this one. So next we're going to talk about Venus, because Venus is what we love, and oftentimes when we love something and we do it, it brings joy to our life. The difference between Venus and the moon is going to be the moon, you really can't, you need it. Whereas Venus, you enjoy it. If there's some kind of affliction here, if there's some kind of thing that's stopping you from being able to fulfill that, it can just cause you to see the world through a lens that is less fun, less enjoyable. And sometimes we don't know what we love. Venus is like our ability to receive the pleasures of life. And so if you have Venus in fire, it's more about passion, action, moving forward, feeling like maybe you have a job or some kind of activity in life where you can be competitive or really see yourself expanding. If you have Venus in an earth sign, you might, again, need stability, grounding, more things that are predictable. Venus and earth signs love working usually. Taurus, because they want to enjoy the things that working allows them to have. Virgo, because they want to be of service and feel useful. And Capricorn, to get to the top of the mountain. So then if you have Venus in an air sign, you're going to love communication. That can be reading, writing. You could love seeing things from a new perspective, really just taking in information, learning, teaching, anything related to communicating. That's going to be Venus in air. And then Venus in water, this is going to be those emotional things. It's going to be emotional intelligence, EQ, really loving psychology sometimes. Venus in water, is probably a more sensitive placement. You can love more sensitive things like art and beauty and just the softer things in the world. You can have a delicate touch. You can enjoy delicacy in different ways. That can be like, for example, fine art or very detailed art. It can be like being a chef and like making the plate look beautiful. There's so many things that Venus and water can enjoy. So that's a quick rundown of Venus for where you find joy. I do have videos on each Venus sign, so you can check those out as well. So now moving on to the ninth house, this really is the major placement for finding the meaning of life. Once you got your moon balanced and your Venus balanced, then let's talk about meaning. The ninth house has many, many things that fall into it. It's a cadent house. It's the house right before the 10th house. So it kind of like supports the 10th house. You know, it's like the stuff we do to get ready for our work in the world. It represents things like the meaning of life, study, the law, philosophy, travel, foreign, anything foreign. Astrology falls in that 9th house. But for this video, because we're focusing on the meaning of life, that's what we're going to focus on. That's the one piece of the 9th house we're going to talk about, but I want you to know it involves many other things. So I'm going to give a simple breakdown of how to understand your 9th house in terms of what you need as far as the meaning in life. So the simple breakdown of how to understand better your 9th house is going to be to look at what the 9th house ruler is and find where it lands in your chart. So if you have Taurus in your 9th house, you're going to look, what is the ruler? What planet rules Taurus? That's Venus. So you're going to find Venus in your chart and you're going to look at what house Venus is in. That is going to tell you the most. You'll get the most bang for your buck when you're trying to understand any house of the astrology chart, by identifying where that planetary ruler lands in your chart. So we're going to quickly go through these, and this is just a quick delineation. It's not going to tell you everything. So you need to find your 9th house, find the ruler, and then look at what house it's in. So we're going to go through these. If your 9th ruler is in the 1st house, you can find meaning through first of all, exploring your own identity, really making life decisions and having your independence. If your 9th ruler is in the 2nd, you can find meaning through the money that you make. You might feel like you are your money, like you identify as how much money you make. For 9th ruler in the 2nd people, that's just what it means. If your 9th ruler is in the 3rd, you can find meaning through communicating what you know. Really being able to speak about the things you know, taking the stuff you know, putting it into, words people understand, whether that be in a job or otherwise. If your 9th ruler is in the 4th, you can find meaning through having a family sometimes, or other 4th house things like your own home. You might just find meaning by having your own home, owning your own home, taking care of your home, rearranging in your home, putting energy into that area of life. You also could find meaning through exploring your ancestry or, cultural origins, ancestral healing, stuff like that. You can also find meaning through the 4th house is also the house of our emotional security. So if you have your 9th ruler in the 4th, you can find meaning through feeling okay at your own skin and learning what matters to you on an emotional level. Sometimes that involves learning how to rise above career setbacks and come back to an emotional center. If you have your 9th ruler in the 5th, you can find meaning through your children, through the people you date, through your creative self-expression. Even if you don't have children, it's just going to be another topic here. Sometimes it's through entertainment in some way. Sometimes it's a topic related to children, even if you don't have any, like someone who writes children's books or something. Going on now to the 6th house, 9th ruler in the 6th, you can find meaning through your habits, through your routines, through what you do on a daily basis, things that you do every single day, chores, work. You can find meaning through work, but it's not necessarily always the work that you do it's not about recognition, okay? 9th ruler in the 6th, if it is through work, it's through the beauty of service, the beauty of being of service and helping humanity and feeling useful. If your 9th ruler is in the 7th, relationships are going to bring meaning to your life. If your 9th ruler is in the 8th, it can be a few things here. This is a complex house. So if it's in the 8th house, it can be intimacy, your really, really deep connections with people. It can be transformational experiences. It can be, so I think of things like psychedelics or other things that really expand that consciousness, or mediumship, things that take you to the other side. Sometimes people with 8th house, 9th ruler in the 8th, you find meaning through psychology in one way or another, or sexuality or other taboo topics, or sometimes the topic of death. Now, this would not mean, everyone's going to die. Usually, for something like this, 9th ruler in the 8th, I would think Maybe someone works with hospice and they find meaning through that work. They find meaning through helping people pass on, or, other things about the topic of death that the person finds meaningful. So don't get scared of that one. If your ninth ruler is in the ninth, it just really emphasizes that the meaning of life is important to you, and you're probably going to find meaning through ninth house things like exploring, traveling, foreigners, the law, philosophy, publishing, writing books, doing a pilgrimage, anything of those, like in any category, subcategory of those topics. So for one person, it might be learning a foreign language or working with foreign trade, or the list goes on and on. This is also the house of astrology. So for some people with their ninth ruler in the ninth, they're going to find meaning through astrology. Keep in mind for this one, if it's Saturn or Mars, especially Saturn, you're probably not going to find meaning through astrology. Actually, someone with Saturn in their ninth house is more likely to find meaning through being an atheist, or even if a belief system is that nothing means anything, right? Even if someone has this nihilistic belief system, that's still a belief system, and it still can give someone meaning. So that's a possibility. Everyone has a ninth house, and there are atheists and there are agnostics. If your ninth ruler is in the 10th house, you can find meaning through fulfilling work, through, doing the right work. So if you have your ninth ruler in the 10th and you're not feeling like you're getting fulfilled with the work you're doing, take a look at whether it's work that you want to be doing, whether you feel like you're in the right job. Ninth ruler in the 11th, you can find meaning through your friendships, through the groups of people you associate with. You can find meaning through following your dreams. You can find meaning through speaking publicly. Sometimes it's about your interaction with an audience. That's not all the time, but sometimes. Ninth ruler in the 12th, you can find meaning in quietude and solitude. This is really a deep placement, of like sitting quietly in meditation and finding answers to the meaning of life, and needing to process and go into the subconscious and go into the dream world. Ninth ruler in the 10th is a very deep philosophical placement. I think of Freud. I think of Edgar Cayce. I don't know if they had this placement, but these are just the things that I think of for that, because it is such a deep psychological placement. So if you have your ninth ruler in the 12th, you are a deep thinker, and anyone with anything in the 12th house needs time in meditation or time in solitude. If their 10th ruler is in the 12th, they prefer to do their work in solitude. So whatever you have in that 12th house, it's okay to do that thing by yourself. So that is it for the ninth ruler in the different houses. Now, to go into a more complex breakdown here, you can look at aspects to your ninth house ruler. This is going to be really especially important if there is a conjunction. So if there's an outer planet conjunction to your ninth house ruler, then that thing is very important to the meaning of life. And then you can look to whatever house that planet rules to tell the whole story. So if you look at my chart, you can see that Taurus rules my ninth house. So we look to the ruler of Taurus, which is Venus. And we see Venus, I'm using a Placidus chart here. We see Venus in the 3rd house conjunct Uranus, exactly conjunct Uranus. So immediately we know I'm going to find meaning in life through communicating what I know. I'm going to find meaning in life through enjoying the senses, just from the sign, enjoying the senses. Now, from the planet in the house, we know the 3rd house is the mind. So really thinking things through, understanding things, learning. I love learning new things. I am obsessed with learning new things. If I don't know something, I Google it. I just love it. I love it. I find meaning from knowing stuff. And so then we look at that conjunction, Venus conjunct Uranus. Well, what does Uranus rule? It rules technology. It rules astrology. It rules sudden changes, electricity, being online. It rules being kind of different. And so now to get even deeper, I'm going to look to what house in my chart is Uranus ruling. So the planetary ruler of the 9th house is conjunct the planetary ruler of the 6th house of habits, work, and, my daily life and health. So what does that mean? Venus conjunct Uranus would mean I find meaning from doing astrology every day. I find meaning from having proper habits, from having habits that maybe make me feel freedom. The planetary ruler serves the agenda of the house that it's in. Okay, so that means Uranus, that sixth house ruler, helps some way contributes to my third house of my mind. And Venus, that ninth house ruler of meaning, contributes to my third house of my mind. So maybe I could find meaning through daily habits that are helpful. Maybe I can find meaning through doing Venus things or Uranus things every day, like making a video about astrology every day. Another thing about this conjunction that's interesting is that Uranus is like an on and off switch. And so it can be, when Uranus is connected to the ninth house, this can be something like a change in belief system. So this means that I could have times in my life where I have one belief system and I change to another and I change to another, and that I could find meaning from that higher mind, right? Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, being all about that higher mind, that higher perspective. So it's like that perspective shift can be very, very meaningful to me. So the process, one more time for that, is find the planet that rules your ninth house, look at what house it's in, look at the conjunction, and for that planet that it's conjunct, look at what house it rules and see what that connection is. Right? So if someone had let's just say that their ninth ruler in the 10th conjunct their 12th house ruler, this would probably be like a preacher who gets their information in solitude and then brings it out into the public, or a writer who works in quietude, who works in isolation, and then, does all this stuff to contribute to the understanding of a deeper meaning or deeper philosophy or Freudian things or Jungian things or dreams or, any of that deep psychology and stuff. Sometimes also if it's a 12th ruler, it could have to do with substance use or helping society with invisible problems like mental illness, substance abuse, any other kinds of addictions or behavioral health, that whole field. That's going to fall under the 12th house. People with 12th house planets can oftentimes almost like hear the cries of humanity and want to answer to the collective suffering. So now if you want to get even deeper, what you do is you look at all the other aspects to that planetary ruler and you learn the whole story, just like we did with the conjunction. But we're going to add in the aspects, that layer of whether the relationship is easy or tense. So if you have tense aspects to your ninth house ruler, you may find that there are challenges to meaning, challenges to finding meaning. Oftentimes, a challenged, like a squared or an opposed ninth house ruler is going to be a person who says, no matter how much I do this, I still can't get meaning out. Like it doesn't feel meaningful. Or no matter how much I learn and apply to this area of life, which would be the house these planets are in, the ninth house ruler is in, no matter how much I learn and study, I can't seem to get this area of life to work for me. So that can happen as well with squares to ninth house planets. You can also see trines to ninth house planets being things like, almost like easy balances, like ways people easily find meaning, right? So depending on what house it's from. Other things to know about the ninth house, if you have your worst planet here, which would be Saturn or Mars, depending on if you have a day or a night chart, then that's going to be tougher. And that's going to outline some challenges to belief systems. So this can be having people oppose your belief systems. You could be the person attacking or poking holes in other people's belief systems. There can be, you can be a skeptic. This is true. I think of like Virgo in the ninth house or Mercury in the ninth house, where you can be a skeptic. It has to make sense. Like just some lofty, airy, fairy law of attraction. Just have positive thinking. Belief system is not going to work for someone with like Saturn or Mercury in their ninth house. No way. So if you have those planets or Chiron there, this is going to be harder. Chiron is a whole different story. If you have Chiron in the ninth, there's a video for that. It's a long video. Yeah, and again, if you have Saturn, you're going to tend more toward atheism. These are going to be the people who do not come usually to astrology readings because they don't believe in it. Now, if you're wanting to know, can I find meaning through work? One of the things you want to look at to see if your work can be a source of meaning for you is to look at connections between the ruler of your ninth house and your 10th house, your second house, or your sixth house. So, for example, someone who has a connection, a conjunction, probably or a trine from their ninth ruler to their second ruler, or they have their ninth ruler in the second house, the way they make money could feel meaningful to them. They might almost need to make money to feel like they believe in themselves. There might be a connection there, where again, like they feel like they are their money in a way. Now, someone who has, let's say, their ninth ruler in the 10th house, well, that's going to be someone who finds meaning from their work, or the ninth ruler and the 10th ruler in a aspect. So you can see whether your ninth ruler has an aspect to your 10th house, 6th house, 2nd house, or the planetary ruler of the 10th house, 6th house, and 2nd house to see what aspect of work you're more likely to find meaning from. Are you more likely to find meaning from the recognition and what you do out in the world? Are you more likely to have a sense of meaning and fulfillment if you're making money from what you do? Are you more likely to have a sense of meaning and fulfillment from just working for work's sake and showing up to be of service and seeing that you're useful? That would be the 6th house. There are other places where the ninth ruler could have an effect on money. For example, the 8th house or 8th house ruler, this is more going to be other people's money or taxes or other things that deal with other people. And you can also look to the 11th house ruler, since the 11th house, one of the derivative meanings is money you make from the work you do. You can look at all of those and see which one of those your ninth house ruler is most connected to see which aspect of work you're most likely to get fulfillment out of. It's possible it may not aspect any of those, but you can still get meaning in life. It just may not come from the work you do. There are plenty of people out there who don't need to do what they love. Sometimes what they love isn't monetizable, and if they were to do it and try to make a business out of it, they would actually hate it, because making it into a business would cause it to be something different. Okay, so I think of someone who just wants to make music because they love making music and they love doing jam sessions. And then if they were to try to make that into a career, that requires stuff that someone who loves jamming doesn't want to do, right? Someone who loves jamming probably doesn't want to be in a recording studio and get the exact note right and use auto-tune and have to deal with scheduling and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for this kind of stuff, I like to try to remember that if we think of ourselves as like the acorn growing into the tree, the chart is just the blueprint of the tree that your soul kind of does want to grow into, even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment. Sometimes we think we want something when really if we did a different thing that our chart is in alignment with, we could find meaning. Sometimes, you guys, the process of finding meaning comes from letting go of the need to find meaning. Okay, so this is something I want to at least mention. If you have some challenges to your ninth house or you have a bunch of Sagittarius planets, sometimes people with these placements, especially Saturn and Sag, these can be blocks to the meaning of life. And one of the blocks can be you're looking so hard outside of yourself that you don't find it anywhere. Right? One of the blocks is thinking that it's over there, somewhere else, in another country, at a meditation center, at a retreat. And Saturn and Sag probably isn't the only placement that can have this challenge, but oftentimes, this is one of the challenges that we have to overcome when it comes to finding the meaning of life is seeing where that meaning is in front of us. So that is another aspect to this as well. So now we are going to focus on transits that highlight the ninth house and the meaning of life. When it comes to transits to the ninth house, oftentimes when planets are transiting our ninth house, this is not the time where we get clarity on the meaning of life, believe it or not. Sometimes it can, but usually it's more of a time where we're asking the questions. What does it all mean? And depending on what planet and what else is going on in your chart, this can be a tough process or a great process. One example is like, if you did have a time in your life where you were doing very transformational work, sometimes that transformational work is when, like, let's say the progressed moon transits the 8th house. And then once it hits the 9th house, this is a 2.5-year cycle of integration. The things you learned from that, stretch experience. So the progressed moon transiting the 9th house is always going to really put emphasis on our faith and our meaning, the meaning of life. Oftentimes, though, it's going to be a time where we are questioning. And everyone's progressed chart has a different sign on their 9th house. So let's say it's going through Gemini. Well, then this is going to be a lot of questions. Whereas if it's Scorpio, it's going to be questioning through digging deeper and researching and getting down to the core underlying reason for everything, especially within the self, within the psyche. If it's Aries, well, it might be questioning, but also doing stuff and being busy or starting something new. 9th house transits don't always bring clarity. Sometimes they get you asking the question, what's meaningful? What matters? What is right? If the aspects to other planets in the chart are like squaring or opposing the 9th, sometimes this can be times where we're breaking away from a belief system, where that tension of realizing that what we thought we knew is no longer true. So that can be in an expansive possible way, or it can be in a more difficult way. Like this person we believe we held in such high esteem is not who we thought we were, and dealing with that disappointment. Loss of faith, especially if you have like a spiritual teacher or doctrine or belief system that you looked up to and held in high regard. Uranus transits to the 9th house can also be, at certain times, they can be really big. Now, they're going to be bigger if you either have a planet in the 9th house, or if Uranus transiting your 9th house aspects the planetary ruler of the 9th house, your 9th house. So if that happens, when Uranus hits that planet or point, usually there is a change to your belief system. And this can be true to any planets that Uranus hits, actually can kind of change the way you think about it. But when it's transiting the 9th house and this happens, these can actually be like straight up conversion experiences where, you go from being Christian to leaving the Christianity, or you get baptized, or something else very, very big that happens that totally changes your worldview. Another time in life where we can have changes to our belief system is the Saturn return. The Saturn return is one of the most, I want to say dreadful, like the most scary sort of transits people talk about. If you guys want a video on this, let me know in a comment. We'll make one. But basically, the Saturn return happens when you're 28 and 56. Every planet returns. So anything with return at the end of the word is going to be that planet came back to where it started, right? So we all have a solar return, which is when the sun comes back to where it started when we were born, which is the astrology way of saying birthday. And, we all have a lunar return every month where the moon comes back to where it started when we were born, et cetera, et cetera. Saturn takes 28 years to come around the circle. Saturn rules time. So because Saturn rules time, usually during our Saturn return, these are times in life where we become very, very aware of the concept of time, how we've spent our time, whether we have spent our time in life well. And we start realizing, man, I don't have as much time as I thought I did. We become aware of our mortality. When you're 28, you just start realizing, I know I did, all the things I thought I would do in my 20s, I did like 3 of them. And at 28, I was like, I better figure out what I really want, because I don't have that many more of these cycles left, right? And so we all have this, and we all have, during our Saturn return, moments of looking back on the past, feeling regret for the things that we haven't done. And if we choose to step up to the lessons, if we choose to step up, we can decide to, usually decide to be more responsible in some way, or live differently, so that during the next Saturn return, we can look back and, feel like we did what mattered, right? Because Capricorn, part of the Capricorn energy is being able to cut away the things that don't matter, sacrifice the things that don't matter for the goals that are the most important. And so even though Saturn isn't really associated with the ninth house in astrology, I do think that the Saturn return as a transit is a time where we're all more focused on what's going to give our life meaning, but not from a place of what's possible and what's, not from a magical place, but from a more realistic place of like, who do I want to be in 30 years? That's the kind of meaning we get from Saturn transits. So, Saturn also withholds things from us. And so the meaning that we get from honoring our Saturn isn't the same as the meaning that we get from the things that come naturally to us. And this is partly why those who master the placement or the point in their chart that's connected to their Saturn can find more meaning from that thing. If you have Saturn in connection to your Venus in your chart, for example, you may find that relationships or the topic of love or the topic of allowing good things in or the topic of pleasure are somehow challenging. And if you learn how to allow those things in, then they will be more satisfying because Saturn withholds and absence makes the heart grow fonder. So the thing about how Saturn withholds, there are things that Saturn withholds that we're never getting back. That it's not in the cards for us to have for whatever reason. I don't believe that we choose our chart or that we choose our problems so that we can overcome them. I think that spiritual belief system has holes in it. It doesn't acknowledge that part of being human involves loss and that we are not God and that we don't get to choose everything. I don't think we choose everything. I think there are some things in life, even if you choose them, you are going to get a negative outcome. It's like, that phrase, pick your poison, or, the Buddhist phrase, life is suffering. Almost everything we choose or that we do on our life path has some kind of pain or sacrifice or challenge, right? So the Buddhist phrase, life is suffering, isn't about life is so bad, it's suffering. It's about how everybody suffers from something. And you pick your poison. Rich people suffer from not knowing where to put their money. Poor people suffer from not being rich. And every single person who has something that is a gift has a suffering that's connected to that gift. So like someone who's an athlete might suffer from not being able to eat whatever they want. And someone who eats whatever they want might suffer from not being in good shape. So it's like no matter what joy we choose in life, there is a suffering attached to it. And so the way this all connects back to Saturn and the meaning of life, the meaning that we can get from Saturn isn't the same as the meaning we can get from something like Venus. When it comes to Venus, it's the joy of just pleasure and enjoying for the sake of enjoying something. But when it comes to Saturn, the joy of Saturn, there is a joy here. The joy is knowing that by the time we get the thing that Saturn withheld, we have earned it. We deserve it. And there is a beauty in climbing a mountain and reaching the top and looking back and saying, I did it. Now, people who don't have strong Capricorn placements are not going to get this. They are not going to get this, but I have Saturn conjunct my chart ruler. So guys, I get it. And I would love to see more people in this spiritual community who get this. So these are the main transits for this video that highlight that ninth house. The progressed moon through the ninth, Uranus through the ninth, and the Saturn return. Now, there are other planets that are going to go through the ninth house, and those matter too, but I just picked the ones that I thought were the heaviest hitters for today's video, and now we're going to move on to some celebrity charts. Okay, so the first chart we're looking at is the chart of Megan Fox. So we're going to look to her ninth house. Her ninth house is ruled by Libra, so we're looking at Venus in her chart. She has Venus in her fifth house in Gemini, which suggests she's going to find meaning through speaking, through talking, through thinking, through learning. And in that fifth house, it can be in a way related to self-expression, entertainment, right? So perhaps being an actor was part of how she found meaning. But from what I know about her, you guys, Megan Fox is super smart and she likes to talk about what she knows, and she likes to read books, and she likes to learn things. She doesn't like watching TV. I've seen her talk about this. Now, what I think is really awesome about her chart too, when it comes to Venus, is that she has, for aspects, she has it in this T-square with Uranus and Jupiter. So her Venus is here at 23 degrees of Gemini. Jupiter is 17 degrees of Pisces, and Uranus at 21 degrees of Sag. We can definitely call the Venus-Uranus an opposition. Now, whether that Jupiter is a true T-square kind of depends on what orbs you use. I would call it one just because it's such a prominent feature in her chart. So, this is going to bring tension for her between trying to speak her beliefs and have it be accepted in public, right? So being accepted in groups. And I know that she had challenges with not getting along with directors and stuff, like calling them out and not getting along with them and stuff. So, this Uranus does show sudden changes, working in groups. Saturn in the 11th in a night chart. This is going to be the place that's going to have the most problems, the most limitations. So sudden endings to certain groups that she's involved with, on-off switch, like the people she's around, it's like an on-off switch. Now, sometimes that can just be simply going to film a movie and then stopping, but that's that. Uranus is the on-off switch. It's also the sign of where we need the most freedom and we can be the most unconventional. So showing up in a group setting was probably always kind of hard for her because of how people don't accept her. She also has Mars on her ascendant, which makes me think that she could probably come across in a way that is more aggressive than she maybe realizes, or is a bit aggressive and she maybe doesn't care. When the ninth ruler opposes Uranus, there can be changes, sudden changes to belief systems. So it's totally possible that she could have been in some kind of a support group at some point in life, or other kind of group, any kind of group that had a certain belief system, and with Uranus in that 11th house, and that at some point it's like, nope, I don't believe this anymore, and then switching. Now, this could happen several times throughout her life. It can also bring some tension to what to believe. She could have had times in early life, especially with Jupiter here, Jupiter, the planet of faith, Jupiter in Pisces, where it's like this desire to believe in magic, this desire to believe that, money is going to be so easy, or, this desire to believe in good things happening. And then at some point, the things related to finances, groups, in entertainment or creativity, there can be, with Jupiter squares, there can be the moment when you realize the belief doesn't match the reality. So being disillusioned when it comes to money, and realizing, man, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, that kind of thing. Or being disillusioned when it comes to your self-expression. Also, the fifth house is the house of dating. And so for someone with their ninth ruler in the fifth house, they might really value who they date. And having that person, whoever that is more meaningful to them than it would be to someone without this placement. They find meaning from dating, from doing things with that person, having fun with that person, whoever that is in their life at the time, whether it can be a serious partner, but it can also be a casual interest. Just because the fifth house, I'm not speaking to Megan's character on that, but just the fifth house rules fun dating, the early stages of dating. And so that can be something that either is really meaningful, or again, because of these tense aspects, this could have also been an area of life there was disillusionment involved. That's all I'm going to say about that before we get too personal, but that's what I have for Megan Fox and her ninth house. Now we are looking at the chart of Tiffany Haddish, and we're going to look at what she finds meaning in. And it's unfortunate that these things are hard to verify. So if you guys know of any interviews or any where they have spoken about their beliefs, comment below, because I'd love to hear it. I try to pick people I know something about so I can chime in on that. But here we go with Tiffany Haddish. So we have her ninth house is ruled by Mercury. ninth house in Virgo, and she has Saturn in the ninth house and Pluto in the ninth house. So immediately, this is someone who I wouldn't say like doesn't have beliefs, but I would say has a more skeptical bent, especially being a Capricorn rising, where generally people with strong Capricorn placements in their chart are going to be more realistic. They're going to be a worldview of facing the negative. You know, they're going to be the ones who, when they want a reading, they want to know about the bad stuff that's coming so they can prepare and deal with it. So with Saturn in the ninth, it's possible someone could have situations early on that give them more of a pessimistic view of life, more of a viewpoint that life is hard. And based on what I know about her, that does seem to be true. Not that she has that belief system, but just that she had she has overcome a lot. With that ninth house in Virgo, you know, this is going to be someone we look at. Where is Mercury? Mercury in that 10th house. And I believe there is a conjunction to Uranus. Mercury at 21 degrees, Uranus at 22. So how interesting. So for her meaning in life comes from her career, and that Uranus stimulates. It's like an on-off switch. So she may feel, if you asked her, like, you know, that rise to success where she became more popular felt like, bam, now you're on the ride and you're not getting off. Like that intensity of like one day she's just a regular person and bam, the next day she's everywhere. You know, that could have been her feeling on it. Although I can't speak to people's feelings. I can just tell you what I see in the chart. So basically having Mercury on the ninth house, this is someone who, yes, they can still have faith and believe in something bigger than themselves, but it may not come from someone else telling them what to do. With Mercury here, it has to make sense. It has to be practical. And if they don't see how it fits into their lifestyle, they're not going to do it. With Mercury in the 10th, she could feel like her life is more meaningful when she has work to do, where she gets to do things that to her feel really intense because it's in, you know, that Mercury-Uranus conjunction is in the sign of Scorpio. And, you know, another thing here is that we can see that Uranus rules her second house. So for her, making money probably makes her life feel more meaningful, which means during the time that she didn't have money, that probably meant a lot to her too. People who have their second ruler conjunct their ninth ruler, money really matters to them. Now, this doesn't mean they're materialistic, like they're shallow or anything, but that they will have a certain level of lack of fulfillment until they have enough money and they've gained that income level that they want. And then, you know, with Saturn there in that ninth house, with Pluto there brings an intensity to learning, understanding, beliefs. Ninth house Plutos are going to be people who, if they ever study abroad or travel abroad, I guess I should say, they're going to have experiences to tell you. And she has stories about other cultures. Okay. She does. She has many stories about like the Mexican family she lived with and all these other different like people of different cultures. So I see that with that Pluto in the ninth. Sometimes Pluto in the ninth brings a bit of an intensity for the quest for the meaning of life. So having Saturn and Pluto here, there's a dance between wanting to know more and wanting to understand more versus wanting to be realistic, not trying to wait for a miracle, but like be the miracle kind of a thing. So that's what I have for this chart. And let's move on now to our final chart for today, which is going to be Joe Rogan. Okay, so now for the chart of Joe Rogan, we're just looking at the meaning of life. We may veer off into a few other things, but that's what we're going to try to focus on. So Joe Rogan, his ninth house is in Capricorn, so immediately we know he's going to have a more realistic belief system. I've heard him say, like on interviews, when someone talks about fluoride, he's like, that sounds like crazy Sedona stuff, right? So he's not airy-fairy in his belief systems. Although one of the reasons I picked him as an example with that Capricorn on the ninth is that Capricorn on the ninth doesn't shut down your ability to expand your mind. It just makes it so you really have to see it to believe it. You have to do the research. You're practical about it. And his is super interesting because his ninth house ruler is part of a yacht. Saturn, Mars, and Venus in a yacht. Beneath the surface, there's a lot of intensity, and I can see why this guy needs to work out all the time. Anyone with Mars and Scorpio needs to work out or, do things to get their energy out every day. But Mars and Scorpio in a yod with Venus, that's another level. So ninth house ruled by Capricorn, Saturn in the 12th house. Immediately, someone who is very much needs a practical belief system, but with Saturn in the 12th house, this is where we see this more spiritual bent of, doing psychedelics and expanding his belief systems through 12th house things. Psychedelics are a 12th house thing. So is smoking weed. Someone with their Saturn in the 12th, their ninth ruler in the 12th, that's going to be someone who gets meaning in life from going off on their own. And in his case, I'm going to say researching, because of that Mars in Scorpio, Neptune in Scorpio, those Scorpio placements really expand his desire to understand the truth and do the research. And you can see that if you've ever watched him, where someone will say something and he's like, Jamie, pull that up. And he wants to do the research. He wants to see what actually happened. So that's interesting. And with Saturn in the 12th, again, that ninth ruler in the 12th, there's a need for contemplation. There's a need for isolation. There's a preference maybe to do things in isolation that contribute to the meaning of life. And having that Saturn be in Aries brings in Aries type things. One of the things that Aries rules is stuff like martial arts and athletics. He announced for some kind of sports. I don't remember if it was UFC or something different. But that's that. And he's very, very, very involved in working out, works out every day. So that Saturn in the 12th, I would be curious if part of that for him is almost like a spiritual practice where he finds, almost like, not just like, I move my arms and now they're bigger kind of a thing, but feeling closer to God as a result of that. So for this yod, we'll just look at the planets involved and what the aspects of the ninth house ruler. We have, that means there's a quincunx to Mars, a quincunx to Venus, and that Saturn trines down to Jupiter and the sun in the fourth house of home and family. So you can see how this is a person who is going to get their meaning in life from researching or working out by themselves and having a family. I mean, this is who this person is. Now, having that sun and Jupiter in Leo kind of show us some of his ability to have the spotlight on him, but it also shows how it's in a private way because the fourth house is a private house. So even though, yes, he gets a lot of attention, he's kind of a public figure, he also does it from home, fourth house sun, and also does maintain a certain amount of privacy. Like, he talks about having a family. I don't know I've never ever known who his wife is or kids are. You never see that. Now, maybe that information is out there somewhere, but he's not broadcasting it. So the fact that Jupiter is in this trine between Saturn and the sun, this makes a very interesting balance with the meaning of life coming from restriction versus possibility. So you can see Jupiter, people who are strong Jupiterian, they're going to be the ones who are like, everything's going to be okay. And then it is because they just believed it. People who are strong Saturnian are going to be like, what are the problems? We need to see all of the problems and then get ready for those problems. So the Jupiterian viewpoint is more what's possible. Let's look at the good, look at the glass is half full. And the Saturnian viewpoint is, well, let's look at the glass is half empty. This may not work out. And so when you see positive aspects between Saturn and Jupiter, this kind of makes me feel like this is a person who has a good amount of both. And so to go even deeper, we can see, well, what house does Mars in that quincunx rule? What house does Venus rule? And what house does the sun and Jupiter rule? So in his chart, Mars rules his 12th house. Back to the meaning of life, back to spirituality, back to possibly, this can go other ways, that 12th house. Repressed fear, repressed discipline. With Mars in a quincunx to that 12th house ruler, this is a challenging aspect where work has to be done to get your daily habits on track with your psychological needs. with Venus in a quincunx, their work has to be done to get your creativity or passion or sexuality in alignment with your spiritual needs. And I would say this is someone who has faced a lot of things within themselves. In order to make a yod work, to be successful, yods are, I have a whole video on yods. Yods are, beautiful thing about a yod is that the challenge of a yod contains the seed of the solution. And the reason is because of that midpoint. Because those two planets in sextile, their midpoint is opposite the planet at the apex of the yod. And that is what makes a yod so much more balancing and actually stabilizing, although it has challenges, than let's say a quincunx by itself would. We can talk about that in another video. But so then Venus in the quincunx to Saturn, Venus ruling the first house of identity and also ruling Libra, which is the 6th house of daily habits, working out. This guy identifies as someone who is healthy, who has never been fat. He talks about, I listen to him a lot. He's talked about how one time he gained 5 pounds or something. So, having an identity as someone who really, works out, cares about their physical daily habits. And then, with Venus ruling that first house, this is also blending the life direction with a creative self-expression, which we also see. Even before he had his podcast, he was on at least one TV show. And then he was a sports announcer. So those are all kind of consistent with 5th house. And then 5th house can also be children. So having children, sometimes that's it. Your life direction, part of your life direction is having kids. Not always. So if you have a 5th house placement and you don't have kids, you just apply it to the other areas of the 5th house, which is self-expression, entertainment, or topics dealing with children that are not yours, like writing children's books. So we're going to stop there for his chart. So make sure you subscribe so you get notified when the next video on the 9th house comes out. We're going to talk about the planets in the 9th house. So that is everything I could put in the meaning of life in one video. It's a big topic. And let me know in a comment below, you guys, if you want more examples, if you want me to go deeper into anything I said today. I love hearing from you. I love your requests. I can't honor every single one of them, but I love every single request you guys throw at me. So keep those coming. And you can also book a private reading with me using the link below. I also have a past life pre-recorded video. It's a 10-minute video where I personally record it and look at the past lives based on your chart. Click the link to get yours today, and I will see you guys all in the next video.